The 25th of October, Ukrainian Media Center is in operation. My name is Svetlana Ochaparenko. We are talking today about the agrarian sector in the wartime. We are talking to Taras Vysotskyi, First Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine. I believe that we can draw up the season of harvesting and its relation to the last year's performance. Indeed, this is the third year of the third year of full-scale invasion. We appreciate the farmers of Ukraine that they have coped with this complex situation. They have been able to sow, grow, and harvest in main categories such as wheat, leguminous bean. As for the corn, we have gathered almost 70%. The rapes have been gathered altogether, including sunflower and beans. Not 100%, but absolute number of and a share of harvest has been gathered. So it is time to draw up conclusions. What are the lessons, the takeaways? Now, comparing to last year, we are at the level of 22 million and 20 million tons of oat, which is almost last year's performance. As for the soybeans, we expect a record 6 million tons. This is a historic record. Ukraine has never seen such a maximum, more than 10 million tons of sunflower. And what we expect in terms of corn, it's almost 24 million tons. These are good performances. But what we are seeing is the decrease compared to last year's. For example, last year, in total, in terms of oil cultures, it was 25 million tons. This year, we will see figures a little bit lower. Objective numbers are that it is explained by the fact that soybeans have been growing, and they seem to be producing less yield. At the same time, we see the adverse temperatures and the lack of precipitation have led to a decrease of yield in the first place when we talk about the sensitive cultures such as corn. And partly it explains sunflower and to a lesser degree soybeans. So altogether, in terms of oil cultures, we are expecting 75 million tons. All factors being taken on board, apart from the weather. We cannot influence the weather conditions, but the Ukrainian agrarians have been successful in providing not only the food security of this country. In terms of cereal and oil, we have gathered 25 million tons, but we have also been able to export those cultures. We will talk about the exports at a later stage, but our Ukrainian agrarians seem to be unbreakable. You mentioned soybeans. Why do you think that agrarians have decided to bank on the soybeans? There are a couple of important factors. They are all equal. The soybean is a very important culture because we are living in a difficult situations, and soybeans require less mineral fertilizers, and it lives in the soil a lot of layers of nitrogen. But you see, logistical things, Black Sea was blocked at some point, so logistics seem to be more expensive when compared to a unit of production as compared to the pre-war times. So to produce a unit of culture higher than 1 ton, the logistics is not that important. Corn, for example, is worth $200, including all different. This is only approximate numbers. Then soybeans reaches up to a higher number. So when you switch over to a culture that on the whole soil is larger but is less, takes less resources to produce. This is why the soybeans have taken much more areas. What is the demand? From what countries is there a demand? Because Ukraine is not used to consuming soybeans. We can process 1/3, so a big share will be exported. Indeed, the main consumers perhaps include the European Union, especially when we talk about special types of soybeans. Then go Turkey and other countries, including China. It is time-related, but closer home, these are European Union and Turkey. As for the winter crops, how much have been sowed and the frosts that are setting in, how do they impact? The Ukrainian Weather Forecast Center has been informing us about the incoming frosts. You see, the winter crops are still being sowed. Not always. The weathers were in favorable conditions. We saw a period when there was not enough wet grounds. In the second part of October, the precipitations were there, so we expect very good harvests. The winter crop rapes has been decreased by 10%, about 10,000 square hectares, because weather did not cooperate. In Dnipropetrovsk region, for example, there was a serious drought, so there is no possibility to sow. As for the winter crops such as wheat and other cultures, including barley, you see, they are taking less time to sow. As for the beginning of the current week, we have sowed about 88% of winter barley and wheat compared to last year. That is to say, on whole, the overall area is planned to be bigger, explained by the fact of the number of wheat. Do we face challenges? Yes, we do. Frosts may adversely impact the whole process, but it depends on whether the frosts will be short-term or longer-term period. We expect some negative impact. Last year in autumn, we see that November and even those December were quite warm. We're now seeing the frosts waves, but we are expecting warmer conditions later on. When compared to last year's performances, we see that the temperatures will rise, and when we talk about 10 degrees Celsius, we, in terms of winter time, consider them to be quite warm, so the risks will be minimal there, and we expect good result there. Objectively speaking, at the end of the day, we will not be able to come with any figures until the early March. There will be a lot of things to be factored in. So the risks are there. In spite of that, the agrarians are sowing, and they are sowing larger areas. The results will be there in March. The yield we expect is very good, as you said, but the prices, as the experts say, will grow. The meat and potato are likely to grow. Potato is now worth 50 hryvnias per kilo. What do you think are the groups that will grow in price. You will remember that the yield is good, but is smaller than that of last year. This is a factor for the price to grow. You see, what we have seen is 10%, which is quite high. For example, you mentioned potato. We've seen minus 4 million tons, which is 18%. A significant number, you will agree, because the drought has dramatically influenced the process. This is why the prices have skyrocketed. We have seen for the last 3-4 weeks that the prices have been leveled, and we expect the prices will not change. So there are no reasons to believe that the kilo for potato will grow up to 50%. As you mentioned, we expect it to be at the level of 30 hryvnias per year, even in spite of the fact that the yields will be lower. And that price allows us to foster and promote our exports of potato. What we are seeing is that the import from the Baltic states and Poland have influenced the prices. This is enough to stabilize what I would define as speculative price and have it the growth of prices to stop. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian consumer will not expect the prices to go down, but the current price is something that will be a benchmark. Perhaps a potential will be there for the prices to grow when spring comes, and then you see it will be impacted by the factors of warehouses, and we will expect plus 10 to 15%, not 50% of growth. This is just impossible in this case. You see, onions is different thing, but potato is very stable, including other cultures such as peeled grains. So we don't see such scenarios coming in, but it will be impacted by the volume of yield. As for the meal and poultry, the prices are stable, as we see. Dairy products, there is a tendency for the prices to grow. Why? Because international prices have grown, and because we are engaged in international economics where the prices go up and down, it is a factor. We are talking about 10-15% of prices growing, plus the factor of inflation, which currently is about 8%, and we expect the inflation to increase by 10%. Perhaps this is a factor that might have impacted our salaries or our incomes, but this is not the case to compensate for the prices growing. The forecast so far is that the average salary in Ukraine is growing in sync with the other burdens. What are the agrarian areas that have been deoccupied and demined? And in general, what is the process of demining of the Ukrainian agricultural lands? Mining is still in progress. The pace is growing. Why is the pace growing? There are a couple of factors. The government institutions, including the emergency services and Ministry for Defense, but we have also seen a certified agents of demining, and they provide services and doing the demining in a quite good way. The state program of backing the demining process, the government is compensating as far as 100% of the money that goes into demining. Budget has foreseen about 1 billion hryvnias, and there will be other monies coming in from special funds. So demining is in progress. More than 200,000 hectares, I think, have been liberated. I will look up the updated data down to a hectare. So far, basically, since the beginning of the year, we have demined 229 square hectares, quite a big number. We thought at first that in the current deoccupation process, about 500,000 square hectares will have to be demined. The areas in need of demining is 512. It's not necessarily demining. We have to survey the areas first. But this is a good pace. 213 out of 500 is almost 50% during the 18 months. The process started last spring when part of Kharkiv region and other regions have been deoccupied. Pace is quite good. If we keep the momentum, we can say that in about 2 or 3 years' time, all the territories will be liberated. You remember that this is a very dangerous work, but people are doing their best. The agrarians, how enthusiastic are they in terms of coming back to the demined areas, taking on board the fact that this is a area close to the hostilities? You see, Ukrainian agrarians are resilient and they're fearless. This is a risky job. Shall I say that sometimes it's not worth it, but our agrarians are fearless. Once they have a possibility, they come back, and sometimes they take it on themselves to demine territories by themselves. We encourage them not to do it that way because we have seen a couple of precedents leading to quite sad results, but we know that they are fearless. I have visited them personally in previous times where the military will allow every single hectare is used. It's difficult. This is the job that is objectively very done. You see, they are wearing bulletproof ammunitions and wherever it is possible to resume the works. This is not a mega critical job, but the risks are there. Of course, they're using, wearing helmets and bulletproof things. It's not about money. It's about the connection to their way of life. It's not explained by the fact of earning money. It's about their way of life. Sometimes they will break even in terms of their investment, but they don't want to leave their lands behind. The enemy keeps bombarding the elevators and port infrastructure. What are the losses there? The end result is difficult to come up with. The cases are still growing. The companies that are insuring those losses, we are talking about tens of millions of dollars worth. The latest wave of bombardments is worth $20 to $30 million. Last calculation we made, not all the Ukrainian agrarian sector, we're talking about $10 billion there, but this particular part, when we gauged the grain that have been stolen, that have been lost, we are talking about tens of millions of dollars, and these losses will grow. We hope that the process that we have launched in terms of compensating these losses will be going. Of course, we are ensuring these losses, and this altogether, we are talking about the compensation of tens of millions of dollars that the aggressor will have to pay for. All these losses are being recorded, whether it's 1 million or 10 million or 10,000 dollars. We are recording them in terms of the international law, and the government will insist that every single hryvnia is compensated, as including Ukrainian ports. What are the expectations in terms of exports? What are the new avenues that you foresee? The export factor is analogous to the last year. What we are seeing here is that last year we exported some 20 billion, but this year we will see a pace of 2 billion exports worth per month. Perhaps the internal market will not decrease the consumption, then exports will be at the level of $10 million. In terms of dollar equivalent of exports, we don't expect any changes. But we also can count for 8 to 10% of growth. All the provocations are not provocations, but rather the bombardment and shelling of our infrastructure. This does not frighten us off. We are exporting on a stable level, including through the Black Sea. Regionally speaking, we can single out 3 major areas of Ukrainian exports. European Union is the biggest one. The share of that part has grown recently. So far, it's the biggest importer of the Ukrainian exports. Then equal shares are shared by Middle East and Southern Eastern Asia and the Northern Africa. As for the Red Sea export routes, you see, logistics have been quite complex there, but the exports are still being implemented. So these regions will be there on the map of our exports. Perhaps EU exports share will go down vis-a-vis the Middle East and Northern Africa. Before the war, those shares were quite similar. So we are heading towards the equal situation in terms of middle and longer-term situation. The expectations, classically speaking, we expect the opening of the market of China in terms of flour, for example. We are still negotiating with India about the Ukrainian exports of our apples. We are talking to South Korea and China. And the most important thing is to continue our dialogue with the European Union so that all the restrictions have been lifted. And the open market area with the Balkan countries. These are all longer-term projects, but in 3 or 5 months' time, perhaps by the end of the year, we will clarify the situation with China. Correspondingly, it will allow us to choose in terms of geography those countries that we will be exporting to. Sugar, for example, is a significant success story. We have produced and diversified. The European Union has introduced quotas, so we opened new markets. Northern Africa, China, and other areas. This is where we have been successful to export the Ukrainian sugar to. That is to say, the government and the producers, the exporters, are looking for every possibility to fight for the Ukrainian economic welfare. Recently, the Polish farmers have announced a possibility of blocking our border. Can we foresee the repetition of the last winter scenario. Risks are always there. But as country, as a state, we do everything possible for the history not to repeat itself. As far as Poland is concerned, of course, these blockings are politically driven. We know that. We are exporting the minimal share of our exports to Poland. But the dialogue was launched last spring between government agency, between regions. Our minister, Mr. Kowal, went to Poland, and they seem to have brought down the risks. So we will do our best for these risks not to be implemented, not to pan out. If the media have questions for our guests, and meanwhile, I will ask you the following: the credits for the agrarians and the subsidies. Is there a demand for them, and how much have you given away? There is a demand. You know about the 579 program. Let me remind you that for the agrarians, there are better conditions. If we talk about agrarians and those that grow animals, they are enjoying special favorable conditions. This program will be effective next year as well. 18 billion hryvnias have been earmarked for that particular project. And we have foreseen them in the budget that has seen the first reading at the Parliament, the Program 579. The latest figures as of 21st of October, in general, we have 11,119 agricultural producers have been using privileged credits, preference credits, within the framework of the 579 program. In general, credits are worth 84 billion hryvnias. 36 billion hryvnias out of that are funded in the program of 579. That is to say, we are talking about thousands of producers and billions of hryvnias of credits. Let me also remind the audience of the following. This year, the ministry has launched the partial guarantees for the agricultural producers. The program targets the smaller size producers that have at their disposal less than 500 hectares. So I challenge all those who have at their disposal an ownership less than 500 hectares. Information is available on our site. Since we don't have questions from the floor, I thank you very much, sir. We've been talking to the first deputy minister of the Ukrainian Agriculture and Theatre, Mr. Vysotskyi. The Ukrainian Media Center will resume its work next week on Monday. And stay tuned.